Hi guys, welcome to the chat. I'm so glad I was able to just hit one button and there's no technical difficulties, nothing. Hi everyone, so glad to see you. Let me go back and see who's talking here. Hi Miss US, I should say, wage slave. Oh, I'm so glad you were able to make it to a live chat. I haven't seen you in a live chat for a little bit, so glad to see you. Welcome to the chat. Green Dragon, welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Cheryl, hello. Glad to see you as well. Kevin the Oculus, so glad to see you. Welcome to the chat. Okay, so I think hi fairy girl, so glad to see you with the dab. I love it. I had a kid come in today for therapy and he's like, Miss Tamara, you're sounding better, you're looking better, and and I'm like, yes, I am. And he's like, yeah. And so I love the dab. So fairy girl, I love them. Thank you for doing that. Rachel Murphy, so glad to see you. Welcome to the chat. Sunshine, welcome to the chat. Thank you so much, Green Dragon. I feel better. I don't know if I told you guys I had pneumonia, and then I had pneumonia for like a week. Then I had laryngitis for another whole week. And now I'm battling what feels like bronchitis, like cough attacks. But anyway, I'm here and so glad to be with you guys. Thank you so much for your love and your tips. You helped me a ton. Thank you so much. Mel Kep, so glad to see you. Welcome to the chat. And hello, Cheryl. I think I mentioned you, but I want to make sure. So let me give you an idea as to what we're going to be talking about tonight. I know my template or my thumbnail said how to escape traumatic bonding. So I'm going to give you a little bit of tips on really how to escape those family relationships that you feel bound to and that you feel burdened by and kind of trapped in. I personally have an extended family that's kind of difficult on both my mom and my dad's side to deal with, to understand sometimes, to manage. And so as a young adult, I'm going to say between the ages of 18 and 25, I had to really make the decision and be very intentional to either build some separation between me and them just for my sanity. And I had to figure out what specific steps to take. Now, by the time I hit 29, 30 at the time, I was like a pro at separating myself from people that are not healthy. So I'm going to give you a little bit of those personal tips that have worked for me. And then I'm going to give you some professional tips from the field and really what psychologists and psychotherapists suggests that we do to manage those trauma bonds. So what is a trauma bond? What's traumatic bonding? Well, I always explain it this way on the channel, guys, and you guys are probably well aware of it, that a trauma bond is really this stuck place that you're in. And you're stuck in the middle between that person's good side and that person's bad side. Patrick Carnes came to the scene a couple of years ago, and I'll try to post some of his information in the description box for you. He's the one that came up with the term traumatic bonding. And really, his form of traumatic bonding was this: there's something that keeps you stuck in relationships, and that tends to be sometimes fear. So a fear of letting go and moving out of it, excitement, right? There's something stimulating about this relationship, and so therefore I'm going to stay in it. Or lastly, sexual feelings and that excitement and stimulation that we get when we're in relationships with really risky people, or people who are just fun and exciting and risky. And so he came up with the term traumatic bonding to explain that rut that we can sometimes get in with another romantic person or romantic partner person. But I have taken, and so has many other psychotherapists and psychologists, we've taken the term traumatic bonding and we've expanded it to include family and close friends, and sometimes even foster or adopted families. So I'm going to delve into that. But let me just check the description box, make sure you guys aren't saying things that I'm not paying attention. Thank you very much, Kevin the Oculus. I appreciate that. Hi, Flying Rhino. I see you. Welcome to the chat. Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you. Yes, tons of prayers that you guys gave me was so needed and such a blessing. So thank you. Lotta Gotti, hello. Glad to see you as well. Blessed in every era of my life. Glad to see you as well. Bree, glad to see you. Welcome to the chat. Okay, so let me just jump in, okay, guys? And as we go along, I'll stop like we usually do, and I'll answer your questions and communicate with you in the chat box. So, this cycle of kind of being stuck between the person's good side and the person's bad side, it's hard to figure out, how do I get out of that, right? How do I maneuver my way out of that? And so, the one tip that I give my clients, and I want to give you guys tonight, is for me, you kind of have to reinvent yourself, because I think when you're stuck in that bind with a dysfunctional, unhealthy family member, or somebody who is emotionally and psychologically abusing you, and you're feeling stuck and trapped, it's not always easy to step out of that. We talk about it a lot, guys, on this channel, where we talk about, building space between you and the family members, walking away completely, moving on in your life without them, detaching emotionally, all of those things. Some of those things are sometimes difficult to actually engage in, right? Because we may be dependent emotionally in some ways. It may be hard to separate in the family, maybe like you'd like to. Maybe somebody's relying on you and you can't walk away. Maybe there's some financial need. Like, there's a lot of ties, right? And it's not always easy to walk away. So I always suggest, while you're in that bind, right, reinvent yourself. And you can do that in many ways. Like, watching this channel, you do it all the time, guys. That's kind of reinventing yourself. You're expressing yourself, you're thinking, you're processing, you're learning, you're connecting with each other. And you guys are so beautiful. You've created such a wonderful, supportive community on my channel. You've really and honestly built the channel alongside me, and I'm very grateful for that. But reinventing yourself can include getting on channels like this and just really learning and growing and communicating. Another way of reinventing yourself might be going to psychotherapy, really getting into the spiritual side of who you are, right? Prayer, maybe religion, maybe, learning how to meditate and process and think. Maybe getting a brand new haircut and just looking different, and buying new clothes, whatever it is, reading new books, journaling more, whatever it is, reinvent yourself. I think that's the number one way to get out of that emotional, traumatic bond that you may be in with a family member. I also suggest exploring where that trauma bond originated. I think there's a lot of times, especially within dysfunctional, unhealthy families, we can't figure out, where did this traumatic issue start, right? So some people believe in family curses. I'm one of them. Personally and professionally, I do believe families can feel cursed. And I do believe that there is something that starts at the very beginning of that heritage or that lineage, and it follows you until somebody breaks that curse in some way. So, exploring where these challenges originated, exploring where the family trauma originated, exploring where the traumatic bonding originated, can sometimes help you make sense out of it in a rational, intellectual way, so that you can then start to work on your heart, and you can then start to work on rebuilding your soul. But I think you really and honestly need to go back and figure out, where did this chaotic, lineage of family trauma and dysfunction and unhealthy ways of communicating and being, where did it originate? I also think too that you want to recognize the psychological conditioning that you have been under in that unhealthy family dynamic. So here's what I mean by that. Operant conditioning, or learned responses, basically means that you're in a situation where you've learned to respond a certain way over time. And in unhealthy and dysfunctional families, it's really easy to pick up behaviors and mentalities and ways of communicating in such a way that it becomes a part of you, right? It becomes a learned response that you now almost lean on, or you rely on, or you engage in, because it just makes sense in the moment, right? So you want to be able to recognize psychological conditioning. Where have I been conditioned? I've had to ask myself that in the past. I encourage you to do the same. Where have I been conditioned growing up, in my family, maybe even in my culture, maybe even in my age group? Where have I been conditioned to believe a certain thing? Guys, I always say this on my channel, family is not everything when they hurt you. And so we're kind of conditioned in this society. We talk about this all the time. We're conditioned in this society to believe that family is everything, right? We have to stay connected to family because they're everything. If you have a wonderful, loving, humble family that just doesn't create trauma for you, that is fantastic. That's wonderful. God bless you. That's wonderful, right? But if you have a family that's hurting you and they're keeping you stuck and they're making all these poor decisions all around you that's negatively impacting you, then I do believe that stepping out of that or somehow building some space with your family is the healthiest option. Learning to respond to these unhealthy family members that you may be trying to understand or that you recognize are in your family, learning to respond to them in a healthy way is the new conditioning that you need. So recognize conditioning, recognize the old conditioning, and then somehow move into the future with a brand new way of thinking about family. Recondition yourself, but in a healthy way. All right, guys, I'm going to come back to this, okay? Let me see where you're at. And I don't have water. I should have water. Okay. Hi, Dragon Man Assassin. Welcome to the chat. So glad to see you as well. Orlando Fuller, I think that's right. Hello, welcome to the chat. I see you. Orlando says, keep taking the remedy. I told you about it. Yes, you did. I'm just going to give a shout out to you. Orlando sent me like a message on YouTube and he's like, turmeric. I think it was turmeric, lemon, and I forgot the other thing you told me. And I did it. I went home and I did like this concoction. And my mom, she was like, okay, I don't know who told you to do this, but my soup always helps cure you. I think there was a little competition there, Orlando. But I did use what you suggested. And let me tell you, my throat was so much better the next day. And then I got laryngitis, but I continued with your suggestion and my mom's soup and lots of prayer and lots of bed rest. And I'm back. So thank you for that. You did tell me about it. Orlando says, people have trauma. However, it's their perception of love. We must learn love in an unconditional way, in truth, with the wisdom of God. Keep up the good work. Yes, amen. I agree with that. So let me pull that apart a little bit. I like what you say. It's their perception of love. We must learn love in an unconditional way. So I'm going to kind of pull from you a little bit there, Orlando, and say that when we are in dysfunctional, unhealthy family units where we've kind of been conditioned to respond a certain way, it is almost like you have to relearn what unconditional love is, right? Because when you're in an unhealthy family unit or it's dysfunctional and you have trauma, you have PTSD, you've been hurt, you've been neglected, you've been mistreated, right? Within that family you thought you can trust, you really do have to relearn unconditional love and what that looks like and how to show it and how to receive it. I have a client actually that's new, and this individual basically said the most powerful thing today that I heard in therapy in session. And she said, I need to reparent myself because my parent traumatized me. And so in order for me to figure out what love is, I have to reparent myself. And I agree with that. So Orlando, you are right. Taking from what you said, I think we need to recondition ourselves to understand unconditional love for sure. Okay. Dragon Man Assassin says, Miss Tamara needs her own TV show. Get rid of Dr. Phil. Oh my God. I'm not going to even talk against Dr. Phil on this channel. I mean, let me give you just my brief. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Dragon Man Assassin. I appreciate that. That's really humbling. But let me just say, Dr. Phil's a little edgy. He's a little edgy. I don't know. Some things I'm like, I don't know, Dr. Phil, that might have been the wrong thing to say. He sometimes does make some really good points. It's like eating the meat with him and throwing the bone away sometimes. And I think that's all therapists, So, but thank you. That's so humbling. Cheryl says, Tamara, you are a great leader, the kind of person you want to be around. You are uplifting and have lots of knowledge. Thank you so much, Cheryl. That's so sweet and so humbling. Believe it or not, I do tell my mom these things. And sometimes I'm like, Mom, I have the best YouTube family ever. And my mom's like, oh, that's so sweet. And she really and honestly does tune in because she wants to see the love. So thank you. George, welcome to the chat. Glad to see you. Hello, hope you're doing well. Green Dragon says, I know when I was in first grade and I took the wrong bus home, and my father to this day, 62, will never let me forget that. I mean, like, that's a little harsh. Like, I wonder why. Maybe tell me in the comments section why. I think that's a little over the top. Like, let it go already, Dad, you know? Rachel Murphy says, feel stuck with an emotionally immature, unavailable, manipulative man. I'd already been gone, but I'm afraid he will try to turn our 3 kids on me and ruin me financially. Any advice? Thanks. Yes. So let me hop on this for a little bit, guys. And then we're going to get back to escaping this bond that you're in. Let me just say to you, Rachel, first of all, I'm so sorry you have to deal with that. I think that is narcissistic and controlling abuse in and of itself. Like, you could tag that narcissistic abuse, because there's always this internal sense that you can get when you're dealing with a narcissist that says, if you do the wrong thing and if you push the wrong buttons on me, then you will be destroyed. And that kind of mentality in the narcissist, we can feel that, you know? And so he may or may not have voiced that to you, but maybe you're feeling that on the inside. And for me, that's the number one sign that you're dealing with a narcissist. It's that internal sense that everything is going to be ruined if I try to make the wrong move. The best way to deal with that is to show him that you are not afraid of him. I think when you show fear, and even if you don't show it, he can sense it. And so the best way to kind of come up against somebody like this is to first work on your mind, work on your heart, heal that, learn some tips, build yourself up. And, you know, if that means throwing yourself into some exercise classes and doing some kickboxing, feeling really confident in your body and yourself, building yourself up emotionally and psychologically, like you're doing tonight on this channel, whatever it takes, build yourself up so that he will sense that you're not to be played with. The other piece of this is, you want to be able to get the message across to him verbally or non-verbally that you are not afraid. I think narcissists can smell fear. And the minute they sense you're afraid of them or worried or concerned, that's when they've won the battle. So stay in the battle, Rachel. I hope this is helpful. And I'll try to do some videos. I'll put it on my list to focus on romantic relationships and how to get out of it. Let me know if you want me to focus on that. Karen Yu, welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Says, I am late, but was looking forward to this all day. Awesome. You're not late at all. I'm going to go a little bit over 9 o'clock. I'm looking to end about like 9:08 or 9:10. Okay. Kyra knows 144. Hello. She says, greetings, Tamara. Welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. All right, let me jump back in, guys, okay? Just so that we can get to the meat of this video. So we left off at recognize psychological conditioning, meaning recognize when you have developed unhealthy ways of acting, interacting, perceiving yourself, and then try to recondition yourself in a healthy way. Now, the next thing is learning about your attachment style. Now, I think we all have attachment styles. We tend to hear more about attachment, emotional and psychological attachment in the mental health world, but I really and honestly think we all have an attachment style. Some of us are anxious, others are disorganized, and they kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They oscillate or kind of swing back and forth between trust and mistrust and fear and contentment, right? So you want to learn your attachment style, and you can actually go online. I'll try to post something in the description box for you guys tonight or tomorrow. Check back. And you can actually take an online self-attachment quiz, and you can learn what your attachment style is. When you've been in a very unhealthy, dysfunctional family unit or family system, figuring out what your attachment style is can help you recognize the steps you need to take to move out of that chaotic, dysfunctional, unhealthy family system, right? Because, for example, let's say you have a disorganized avoidant and anxious attachment style, it's really going to be hard for you to walk away and feel empowered if you are afraid to attach to people and you're afraid to trust them and you're afraid to just share things about yourself, you know? When you're swinging between trust and mistrust of other people, or anxiety and contentment, that can confuse your mind and your world. So learn about your attachment style. That's really, really important. And I'll try to talk a little bit more in the future about attachment style. I think it's essential. Also, be okay with being alone in your family. That's something I talk about all the time. I'll post my previous video on that topic in the description box after tonight's chat. But learning to be alone in your family and learning to be okay with that is essential. It's when you get psychologically caught up in that idea that family is everything, that I can't walk away from my family, that what are other people going to think if I walk away? And is it just me giving up? Like, should I try harder? Once you get caught in that mental world, then you know that you're not going to succeed, because that's going to weigh you down. It's going to burden you. And then you're going to get stuck and you're going to stay. And that's how trauma bond forms. You know, you get stuck in a pattern of behavior and it's hard to get out. So learning to be alone and learning to be okay with being alone in your family is essential. So I'll post that video in the description box. I also think doing your personal research is essential. Go online, and as you guys are doing on my channel tonight, get into support groups online. And, you know, I'll try to put something in the description box on that as well. Get into support groups where other people online are really supporting each other and trying to help each other understand how to escape a traumatic bond. If you do some research on the kind of person you're trying to escape, that can be helpful too. So look up different kinds of narcissists. I just did a video on different kinds of narcissists. Go check that out if you haven't already. Figuring out what kind of person or family system or relationship am I trying to get away from. And once you figure that out, I think it's going to be a little easier to walk away from that bind you're in and walk away from that trauma bond. You have to know exactly what you're walking away from, though. Right? Because like with Rachel Murphy, she's afraid to do anything because she's afraid that he is going to take her children away. Well, that's when I would get online, start Googling narcissistic relationships, start Googling malignant narcissists, start Googling vulnerable narcissists. Compare, look at the traits, the behaviors, and see if you could see that person. And then start setting your plan out to walk away or to put up some boundaries after that. But first, you got to know what you're dealing with. I think too, learning to recognize patterns of unhealthy behavior in yourself, right? Am I doing things that is not helping myself? Am I giving the other person or my family the wrong signals that I love them and I want to be a part of them? And yet when I get upset, I walk away and slam the door, right? You don't want to give mixed signals. So kind of pause for a minute and ask yourself, what could I possibly be doing that's not helping? I had someone consult with me, 2 years ago. And one thing I saw her doing, and she didn't see it herself, and it was really, we needed to come together as a team to look at some things for her to say, oh my God, I'm making this worse. She was actually engaging in what's known as emotional extortion or emotional blackmail. And what that means is she was using the emotions of the situation, the anger, the rage, the resentment, the depression, the anxiety, the family feuds, the dysfunctional ways of communicating. She was using all of those things and really blackmailing her parents and blackmailing her siblings. And she would say things like, don't make me get upset with you because I can go straight to the police and show them exactly what you did to mom last year. You punched a hole in the wall, didn't you? And then you strangled her. So I can take that video I took of you and take it to the police. Don't make me mad. And so doing those kind of things, that's emotional extortion and that's emotional blackmail. And she didn't even know she was doing it. She thought she was protecting herself and putting up a boundary when in all actuality, she was really making the situation worse. So as hard as it might be, guys, pump the brakes maybe if you feel stuck in these kind of binds with your family and ask, where could I be contributing to this? I had to ask that question many, many years ago. I came up clean, okay? I wasn't contributing. I was actually enabling, and I had to figure out how to get out of that. It's a cycle I didn't want to be in. So pause and ask yourself, what am I doing? Is there anything I could be doing that's making this worse? All right, guys. So let me go back to the description, not to the description box, the chat box. I'm saying all kind of stuff tonight. I'm so tired. Forgive me. Cheryl says, I think Dr. Phil is a narcissist. Well, it's not my first time hearing that. Yes, it was Ginger, Orlando. Thank you for that. Oh, he is shock value carrying you. I can see that. I think so too. I think so too. Flying Rhino says, pulled away from my family several times in the last 10 years, a lot of toxicity, bereavements bring us together until the drama starts again. My God, am I glad that you brought that up, because that's something that a lot of families in my practice right now are dealing with. And it's something I dealt with 2 years ago myself. And I don't remember seeing you in the description box, so I'm just going to go over this briefly, that my dear grandmother, who was like the literal queen of our family, she was like at the top, and there was nothing I couldn't go to my guy about. That's what I called her from day one. And she passed away in 2020 unexpectedly. We did not know that her health was declining. She had pneumonia, some complications happened. It was around COVID time. Hospitals were a mess, and she passed away. We were so close, my extended family and I, my mom and her brother, my mom and her nieces. Everybody was like this, right? For the funeral, for setting things up, for the burial, all of it. But when the will came out, and I was the executor of the estate, and my grandmother put a lot of trust in me, and that was found out, and the family started getting sucked into their erroneous ways of thinking and behaving, that conditioned psychological conditioning, that condition response that they always have, that's unhealthy. That's when I saw the claws come out of everybody. And for some reason, and I want to make sure I get your name right, Flying Rhino Films, for some reason, bereavement can cause that momentary peace and everybody's together, and then shortly after, the whole thing just explodes. And I think that's because death is so raw, it's so final, it's so painful, and so we come together at that time. But once that pain is over, that's when the drama starts all over again. And so for me, it's a normal thing for families to go through that. But I've had some colleagues say, you know what, that's not really normal. That's a little bit dysfunctional, because everybody should still stay connected no matter what. And so, I don't know where I'm at in that, but I can definitely relate to that. I think it's so unfair. And the person who's passed away, they have to be flipping in their grave and turning in their grave, as my grandmother used to say all the time, looking at the drama like it's just unnecessary and all uncalled for. So I'm sorry you had to go through that. Times like that too highlights why stepping away from your family is sometimes the best decision. Seeing families fall apart during funerals and just be really dramatic and drama laden, so to speak, that's the number one sign for me that you need to put some space between you and your family. Breezy, Beezy, the wise warrior. Hello, welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. Okay, you guys are commenting with each other. Green Dragon says, I think it was my dad's way of controlling my behavior. I'm the black sheep of the family. Okay, so so Green Dragon is commenting with someone in the chat box. But let me just say, the black sheep of the family in psychology is known as the lost child. And that's the individual who is really quiet, not really sure of who they are, not really sure, what their identity is. You can also be put under the heading of a scapegoat, right? The bigger issue is the whole family, but you are somehow the problem. And anytime that happens in families, that is usually the number one sign that it's dysfunctional. You're going to say that this one person is the black sheep, that they're the scapegoat, that they're the one that the issue is with. No, it's usually the entire family system. It's not usually just one person. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Bree Bree says breaking generational cycles is so hard when trying to balance your health and remothering, especially when you're disabled and always self isolated due to depression. Yeah, absolutely. Let me give you a suggestion there. Breaking generational cycles, which have always been a part of my extended family's experience, my mom's experience, breaking generational cycles is really difficult, but I think you can start one baby step at a time, and that's again reconditioning your mind, figuring out what do I need to do for me to make myself more powerful, to make myself more educated, to make myself stronger. How do I reposition myself in this life so that I can go down a different road than my family? That might be an easier way to conceptualize breaking a generational cycle. That's what I did. And I realized, okay, my family went this way and that was the hard way. Maybe I need to go that way. And that's what I did, one baby step at a time. So I hope that that's helpful. But you're right, it is very difficult. Yes, you're welcome, Rachel. Yes, absolutely. Bree Bree says again, emotional neglect, I notice, has patterns of self isolation as well, which is tough when dealing with so many emotions. I have been working on educating myself the past 2 years, watching YouTube psychology videos. Yeah, there you go. There you go. And you're repositioning yourself in life that way, Bree. I think you're doing it the right way. Hi, Sean Hammer. So glad to see you. Welcome to the chat. Kevin Oculus says disorganized, fearful, avoidant, attachment style helped a lot to know that and to work on how I react to things. Yeah, absolutely. And attachment style, as you said, is a good place to start. I also think too, trying to figure out what your temperament is, right? Am I reactive? Am I impulsive? Am I depressive? Like, what's my reactional style? That's my new word tonight, guys. Reactional style to my family, because our families directly trigger us most of the time. So, what do they trigger in us? Do they trigger depression? Do they trigger anxiety? Do they trigger me to snap out? What do they trigger in me? So that you can then start working on that so you can escape that trapped trauma bond feeling that you have. So that might be something to think about as well, Kevin. Hello, Liberty Kin. Welcome to the chat. So glad to see you. My phone's letting me know I'm close to wrapping up here, guys. So Cheryl says, do you know a good dissociative identity disorder, a DID support group? I don't, but let me see if I can pull this up. Give me 1 second, because wait, there is the International Society. Hold on. Okay. It is the International Society for the Study of Trauma and Dissociation. Right here, guys. If you can you see that? I don't know, it looks backwards on my screen, but it's the International Society for the Study of Trauma and Dissociation. Now, if you click on that, you go to, go to resources. I don't know if you can get in, Cheryl, but if you go to resources, you should be able to sign up for some of the information there. And I would even go as far as to email them and say, are there any support groups for DID? There are very few. That's my understanding, but that might be a good place to start. Sean Hammer says, maintaining healthy boundaries and discourse without starting new fires that need putting out takes practice. Oh, yeah. So maintaining healthy boundaries without starting new fires. Right. So let's say, for example, you say to that person you're traumatically bonded to, or you say to that family member, okay, here's my boundary. You're not going to do this to me anymore. We're not going to get into arguments every time I tell you no. Or you're not going to make me feel trapped and threaten suicide so that I won't talk to you anymore because, right? Whatever that, exchanges between you and that family member, sometimes setting that boundary can cause a whole firestorm of chaos. So my suggestion to get out of that bind is often to set boundaries a little bit at a time and try to fit those boundaries in a way that's natural so that that person doesn't lash out at you for setting that firm, rigid boundary. Try to set little boundaries a little at a time. Sometimes you do have to totally disappear, and other times you can like slowly back away. My great grandmother used to say, ease your hand out of the lion's mouth. And I used to be like, what, Granny? And she's like, ease your hand out of the lion's mouth. And that means pull away with wisdom little by little until you're completely gone and you've set that healthy boundary. You're really conditioning and reconditioning that other person to understand what your new boundary is. So slowly set that boundary and then you can go from there. That might be helpful. I tell my clients that all the time. Oh my God, Liberty Cam says, is Dr. Phil a narcissist? Oh my God, I'm getting off this Dr. Phil bandwagon, guys. You're trying to get me kicked off YouTube, aren't you? Yes. Okay. Bye, Kevin. Have a good night. I see that. I gotta go too. Um, I mean, some people feel like he is, but I don't know. I don't know. I appreciate some of the things he has to offer for sure. Fairy Girl says, I have asked my healthier fam to allow me to grieve losses in my own way, and they respect that. I choose not to attend services. I think that's great, Fairy Girl. And I actually like and respect that as well. Everybody doesn't respond to funerals in a way that's healthy. And you're the only one that has to deal with that pain and that mental torture after the funeral, right? Because everybody goes their own way. My mom does the same thing. And before I grew up and became a therapist, I was about maybe 10, 11, 12. I used to think, Mom, stop skipping funerals. Like, I don't get you. But then now that I'm a fully grown adult, I'm a therapist, I totally get it, because you have to grieve in your own way. And so setting that boundary, Fairy Girl, is healthy. I think it's needed. And if you ask me, if you don't want to be a part of a funeral because you know it's going to make you feel terrible, you're not going to be able to move forward in a healthy way, then step out of it. Don't even get sucked into that bind. I wouldn't do it. I would love that person, wish them a loving farewell, and then keep moving. Because when it's all said and done, that family member who's deceased may understand you more than the family who doesn't get why you're not going to the funeral. I hope that makes sense. Dragon Man Sasson said, I saw that when I was a kid. After someone passes away, the vultures go at it. Yeah, absolutely. I don't get that. I really don't. All right, we're at 9:10, guys. Let me keep going. Yeah, Liberty Cam says, I just won't attend funerals. Yeah, absolutely. Once my grandmother passed away, I made it up in my mind as well that I'm not going to attend any other funerals unless it's those who are close to me. My mom, my younger brother, my older brother, and his children and his family. Other than that, I'm not going to any more funerals. And it isn't me being cold-hearted. It's me saying, you know what? You guys are stuck in that vulture-like mentality, and I'm stepping out of that. I don't want it. Life is too hard as it is, and I'm not doing it. So, Liberty Can, I'm with you. Just don't go. Hi, Manny Williams. Hello. Welcome to the chat. I hope I said that right. Says, hi, I'm just joining. Happy to finally be here. Yeah, glad to have you here. Glad to have you. Let's keep going, guys, because I'm going to wrap up in literally 2 minutes. Old Apple Orchid, hello, welcome to the chat. She says thank you, or he says thank you. You're welcome. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but you're welcome. You're welcome. Anubis, the opener of ways, says hello, Tamara, and hello to the chat. Hello, welcome to the chat. Glad to have you. Okay, we're going to keep moving. And let me highlight something, guys. You guys are so wonderfully inclusive when a new person comes on. So thank you so much for doing that. That's so beautiful. I'm so glad to see it. Orlando Fuller says, what I've learned from dysfunctional family, past trauma, hurt, etc., teaches us what we need to give ourselves and others. Through this hurt, we look inside our spiritual self, strength in our weakness. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. And I also think, too, we're a little bit more wise than people who aren't experiencing this kind of stuff, right? Because and that may be harsh to say, so forgive me if that is a little bit short-sighted, but I personally and professionally believe that you don't fully understand life until you have to really swim. And so we all have challenges in life. We all have barriers and all of that. We all have challenges, struggles, things we're trying to overcome. But for me, it's not when you really have to swim, you're forced to swim, that you honestly and truly get life. Because without that experience of being forced to survive, forced to figure things out, life is kind of comforting to you. You may have some hardships, but you just don't fully get it yet. And it doesn't mean you're less than, it just means you haven't gotten there quite because you haven't experienced that really hard part. I hope that makes sense without sounding condescending. But I think you're right for sure, Orlando. I agree. Sean Hammer says, please avoid new age psychotherapy life coaching gurus. They're unregulated and largely diluted. I mean, I don't disagree. I don't disagree. If there's somebody that seems humble and knowledgeable and inclusive, fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. Bree says, speaking of funerals, my grandpa once had me take images at an uncle's funeral because he couldn't believe that my uncle took his life. I had to bring his flag home. Oh my God, Lord, I'm so sorry. That's really traumatic in and of itself. Very, very sorry to hear that. I would not have been able to kind of sleep and process for a while if I were in your shoes. But all right, guys, I see all the hearts and the flowers and the love. Thank you so much, as I always say. You're welcome, Cheryl. I see you. You're welcome, Liberty Can. I'm going to sign off right here at 9:13. I will try to be back next Wednesday at some point. I think I'm going to start doing live chats every other Wednesday, just so that I'm not leaving the office this late every Wednesday. You know what I mean? So, but I love you guys. I'll figure that out as we go along. So I'm going to sign off. Love you so much. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next live chat, hopefully. Bye, guys. Have a good night.